we turn our attention to another advancement in Christianity, having to do with an understanding of, first, what is meant by the communion of saints in heaven, and the question as to whether or not there are saints in heaven, Mother Mary, even the saints who are archangels, who have a proper role to play somehow or another in helping the mankind of earth. Needless to say, that limited role does not begin to compare to the active engagement of the brotherhood of light here in this world of form. And that is where the transcendent advancement comes to play. So for a few moments, we will tarry long enough to simply reiterate what is the prevailing opinion in, for example, the Eastern Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Catholic world, and the even more dubious opinion on these subjects that has been held since the time of Martin Luther and the other Protestant reformers. We begin by a simple assessment, a reiteration of a very recent, widely read, widely acclaimed book that was written about what it means to be a Christian in any age, this age included. First of all, who and what people are, what they are not, and their purpose for being created. The Bible says that all people possess part of the image of God, which explains why such things as murder or abortion are wrong. But that image is incomplete. It is damaged, distorted by sin. And that is the reason God sent Jesus on a mission to restore the full image, which we have lost. What does this full, quote, image and likeness, unquote, of God look like? It looks like Jesus. The Bible says Jesus is the exact likeness of God, the visible image of the invisible God, and the exact representation of God's being. People like to draw upon the phrase like father, like son, to refer to a family resemblance. When people see my likeness in my children, it pleases me, and God wants you, who are his children, to bear his image and likeness as well. Nevertheless, let me be absolutely clear. You will never become God, or even a God. That prideful lie is Satan's oldest temptation, which he promised Adam and Eve if they were to follow his advice. Therefore, there are many religions and New Age philosophies which still promote this age-old lie, that we are divine or can become gods. This desire to become a god shows up every time we try to control our circumstances, our future, and the people in our lives. But as creatures, we will never be creator. God does not want you to become a god merely, or he wants you to become godly, taking on his value, attitudes, and character. You are to love God with all your heart because you were planned for God's pleasure. Your purpose in eternity is to love God by worshiping God. So, in this author's mind, of course, before or after, whenever the transition from this world to the next occurs, some Protestants believe that even those who are saved will sleep until the second coming. Others believe that the soul goes to heaven and is there worshiping God until the second coming, when their souls will be reunited with their physical bodies that were buried in the earth following their transition. The cultural writings and theological writings of the church through the Middle Ages is replete with images of this idea of who people are in their souls and what they occupy their lives with once they are, quote, in heaven. You might recall Dante, when he travels to paradise, he describes concentric rings of angels who are all in an orderly amphitheater arranged around the presence of God, and a similar amphitheater that is composed of all of the souls who have been saved. And these souls are all engaged essentially in the same activity. They are all occupied with a rapt devotion and worship of the presence of God. Just as the author I just cited explained to you, that they are there for the purpose of God's pleasure. And his pleasure is that they should receive his love and give that love in return. It is not so much that this dimension is not worthy and a part of reality. It is that it is the exclusive, almost only role that is ever envisioned for mankind. When it comes to the Protestant denominations, that really is the extent of it. Catholics have one additional element in that, through ways that are never quite explained, other than somehow when you are in heaven, you are not any longer confined to time and space, and therefore anyone's consciousness is free to receive the call or the petition from someone who is alive, a believer who is alive, who asks one of the saints, one of the archangels, or the Mother of God, beloved Mary, asks them if they will intercede on their behalf with God the Father or God the Son. That intercession, the only lawful, acceptable form that such intercession can take, is basically the same as if you, here in this world, were to ask someone to pray for you to God. And if you were to pray to God, then, of course, God is the part of reality that is going to answer that prayer. So the saints themselves, with the possible exception of a more dynamic role for Archangel Michael, the saints are viewed as, whilst they are in this orientation, this amphitheater of the paradise, while they are in that orientation of adoring and loving God, much as the angels do, when they become aware that a request has come up to a given saint for their help, the only role of that saint is to address a prayer to God on behalf of the person who is asking. Not that that is not something. That is certainly better than nothing at all. But that is not what the truth of cosmic law is as it relates to the ascended masters, nor will it be cosmic law as it relates to you once you have gained your ascension in the light. If you'll recall, one of the elements just pointed out is that the attention is directed inward. It is directed to the presence of God with more or less a non-awareness of things happening in this world. That is not the case with the entire spirit of the Brotherhood of Light. Suffice it to say, as beloved Saint Germain has sketched the chain of the ladder of the hierarchy of ascended masters and cosmic beings, it begins in the heart of God in the great central sun, and although various beings may, for the most part, maintain their station where their office has suited them best, nonetheless, they are not only directing their attention inward exclusively on the presence of God, but those who have covenanted with the Lord of the world and the regent of our world, beloved Sanakumara, they have made a compact or a covenant with one another and with their unascended disciples. Much like when God gave those promises to Abraham, repeated them to Isaac and to Jacob, and as God gave this great covenant between his firstborn son Israel, being the 12 tribes, through Moses. And there was a program that was envisioned where there was direct engagement in the hierarchy of light with unascended mankind. In our hierarchy, we understand that there are those spirits, so-called, who are really the 12 mighty Elohim, who occupy some of the highest levels within the very white fire core of being in the heart of the great central sun. They have an expanded awareness in ways that it would be too difficult to explain here today. A general awareness that allows them to include vast amounts of detail in their consciousness and have that all-knowing faculty that is native to the presence of God himself. The Elohim from within out are constantly sending forth their perfect light and sustaining creation and sustaining the river of life, the fivefold expressions of the river of life going forth from the heart of the great central sun. You might think of them standing in that sun, facing outward in perpetual and constant service to this world and many, many, many such worlds. Between the Elohim and our earth, we have the angels and archangels. And their role is closer in a sense than that of the Elohim. You might consider that the archangels and their legions that work with them shuttle back and forth, as on Jacob's ladder, ascending and descending constantly, going into the heart of God and coming forth out of the presence of God and coming all the way to this densest of worlds, and they're releasing the light that they have received. They have a role of stepping down the highest level of intensity of the light that is generated by the Elohim in the heart of the great central sun. They are veritable transformers who, for example, in the case of the first ray of the will of God, you would have Archangel Michael, who is a transformer for the power of beloved mighty Hercules in lowering the power of God and stepping it down so that it can be more practically engaged in the substance of the feeling world, the substance of the mind and emotions. If I could give you a rough analogy of hierarchy and how it works, you might consider that the dynamo of the great central sun is like a tremendous power-generating station. And there the 12 Elohim are sending forth those 12 primary rays of God qualities and Christ virtues of the secret rays, sending them forth out into creation. Those are like those tall, high-tension wires and network that go out from a power-generating plant and travel vast distances across the land in those high tensions. Then you will have substations along the way that are the first stepping down of those huge voltages, high amps of power. The archangels are that intermediate substation. They, in turn, not only work with unascended mankind and elemental life, but they, in turn, are accessible to and work in cooperation with the Christed lineage of the ascended masters, especially those who, like the Catholic saints, have been in incarnation in this world any number of times, any number of lifetimes, but have gained their final victory and mastery following the example of beloved Jesus. Not that they all accomplished it chronologically after he did, but utilizing the same means that he used even before he demonstrated it publicly. They have ascended from this world. Once they have ascended, they are able to maintain a very intimate and close association with this world, according to the service that they wish to render, their karma, and the ties that they have to various unascended life streams who come and go from embodiment. Below the archangels, in that sense of nearness to the earth on a regular basis then, not necessarily by any means in terms of their real attainment, but in coming closer to this outer world, you have the Chohans of the rays and the other ascended masters who, while they have never abandoned their station in the heart of God and the great central sun, by dispensation and by their free will election, they have chosen to sustain a more or less permanent anchor point in the earth. This they can do. If you read the book of Acts, in chapter 1, I believe it is, after the 40 days following the resurrection, when Jesus took his ascension, it says that he rose up and a cloud received him out of their sight. This was the absorption of his resurrected Christ's presence and four lower bodies being absorbed and drawn up into his electronic body. Immediately, as he disappeared, Acts records that there were two men in white raiment that stood where he had disappeared and posed a rhetorical question, saying, "Ye men of Galilee, why do you stare up into heaven? For this same Jesus shall come in like manner as ye have seen him go." Which means, in that sense, once you have attained the ascension, when there is a purpose and the karma allows for that purpose, or the mercy of the law and the dispensation of the brotherhood collectively allows for that purpose, then the ascended masters can and do re-enter the world arena and engage in changing world affairs. What comes to mind is the statement of our own beloved Saint Germain when he was traveling around Europe and Russia and even the Americas as the Wonder Man of Europe. The occasion of the 4th of July, 1776, when the signers of the Declaration were vacillating, and Saint Germain stepped through the veil, appearing as an elderly man in the galleries, and gave that stirring speech which culminated in the imperative sign that document. That was an example of one such reappearance of an ascended master. The point is that the Chohans of the rays are the primary part of their service is working in a closer vibrational proximity to unascended mankind. They associate more closely with their own select group of disciples. They will maintain more monitoring and awareness of crises going on in economic circles, political circles. They have means available to them that they are able to anticipate various types of natural catastrophes and intercede to mitigate those catastrophes wherever possible. As beloved Moria stated on one occasion, the ascended masters, the Chohans, work invisibly visible. Invisible to the outer sight, but very close at hand. The Mahachohan, as Homer and as Virgil, memorialized this role of various members of the hierarchy any number of times. His heroine of choice was none other than his own twin flame, beloved Pallas Athena, who often surrounded herself in an invisible mist that allowed her to come and go without being seen. But then when she chose to, she could appear either in her own form or in a form that she would borrow from the records of someone deceased. She would appear to do certain things. So the ascended masters are engaged in this world of form in a most direct way. One of the ways that you can understand how they are able to do this is understanding the action of the causal body momentum of the ascended masters. We have said, and stated rightly so, that all of the vehicles, the causal body included, are drawn up into the electronic body in the ascension. But it is then at the discretion of the newly ascended one, or the one who's been ascended for 100,000 years. It is at their discretion when they are able to, by focusing their attention in a certain realm, such as the nirvanic world, or they can focus their attention in the Buddhic world, the mental, the emotional, or they can focus onto the physical plane. And wherever they focus their attention, there will be assembled a vehicle of their ascended master consciousness. And not only one vehicle in one place, but if need be, they have enough limitless light that they can have as many vehicles as are fruitful at diverse points across the surface of the earth or at inner levels. One of the main forms of the service of these ascended masters is to maintain the outpost of their ascended master presence in the realm of the causal body. This is a realm that Christians will not have any familiarity with whatsoever. And there's not the time now to explain really how it works. But suffice it to say that the earth herself and all of the populace of the earth, all of the inner realms of thought and feeling, the subjective heaven worlds of those who are between embodiments, all of those are nestled in the embrace of this far more vast nirvanic plane. And when the consciousness of an ascended master comes down into that plane and maintains that outpost, we have there this spherical vehicle of expression referred to as the causal body. You see 7 of the bands of that color, of that causal body in the various colors. Those are the hard-won gifts of attainment, talents, abilities, capacities of all shapes and sizes that have been drawn up from all of the many embodiments, as well as put down by the mighty I Am Presence into that electronic body. Not only are they the original talents, but they are those talents multiplied 100, 1,000-fold, however many times it might be. You might recall that the reward for the just steward who received the 10 talents or the 100 talents was that his Lord said, "Well done, thou hast been faithful over a few things, I shall make thee ruler over many." So there has been the multiplication of those talents. The beauty of this causal body of one ascended master, and really, this is going on with your I Am Presence and your causal body and your Christ presence, unbeknownst to you, although it doesn't always penetrate through to your outer awareness or affect your outer world until you're ready. But one of the blessings of it is that just as a musician can commit to memory a piece of music to where they no longer have to think about what their fingers are doing or their foot is doing, but they can play the music, just as a typist is able to touch type by looking at the words and just having their fingers do it. So too, gifts and attainments in that causal body work instantaneously and, when need be, simultaneously many times, so long as that attainment is present. There is, of course, fresh new God consciousness always infusing that causal body from the electronic body. And this is where the I of the I Am meets the Am of the I Am, and the I Am presence is able to operate through its vehicle of the causal body to do as many things as that presence may be called upon to do. When it comes to rendering assistance, then, or answering calls, we could take the example of the woman who had the issue of blood, who felt as if she really didn't have the courage to go up and ask for a healing directly. But she had faith. She reasoned within herself, if I can simply touch the hem of the Lord's garment, then I will be healed. That was a prayer, although it doesn't have the usual appearance of one. But it had an act of faith. It had an anticipated result. And it created a draw. And fortunately, the connection was made, in this case, through the touch. And when that touch was established, she had already made the call. And the grace of the light that had been stored in the aura of beloved Jesus poured into her call and performed the service that she needed. All of this before Jesus could even know that it was happening. As the light passed through his form, he did detect that passage. That was all outwardly that he was aware of. So if you can imagine, this is one of the blessings of the ascended state, that all of the good that any ascended one has ever accomplished is available there, and through the impersonal action of the law, it will answer every call instantaneously with the full ascended master light of the one who is giving that call. There was a humorous attempt to depict what happens when people pray many years ago in a movie, when God decided to pick a new disciple and assigned this person the job of answering prayers. And this person, since he had this ability, said, okay, what we'll do is every prayer will be written down on a yellow Post-it note. And so he said, let me see the prayers that have come in the last 5 minutes. And just that quickly, his whole computer screen, the walls of his room, the windows, everything was plastered with tens of thousands of individual prayers that people had sent up to God. And this one person lamented how he was going to possibly, one after another, answer all of those prayers. Of course, that's looking at it from a human standpoint. From the ascended master point of view, your causal body is not confined to a linear action of one thing after another. It is part of this vehicle that is just one stage lower in vibration, stepping down the consciousness, the limitless omniscience of everyone's individual mighty I Am presence. So as quickly as a call comes, that call by an ascended master, the call compels that the answer flash forth from the ascended master's body. The call can come as a prayer. It can come as the ritual of the Mass. It can come as a yearning within the heart, an unspoken plea that is murmured in sleep. That call will go forth. The light of that call will go up. It will strike the heart of the causal body of the master to whom it was addressed, or masters, as the case may be. And back on the return current comes the ascended master, amplified release of light to perform the work that was in that petition. Your mighty I Am presence as well, when you reach a certain level of harmony, when you can be entrusted with the release of what they call in the East, Dharma Mega Samadhi. It's the virtue pouring light. It is when all of your causal body is flooded with the outpouring of light from the mighty I Am Presence, and all of that resonates with the white fire combination of all of the 7 rainbow rays, and it all sluices out and down into the lower vehicles. So there is an ease, a facility with which these things are done scientifically. I might add that in order for any ascended master to answer such a call through the seat of consciousness of their causal body, that one will have to have some degree of attainment in the light that is needed in order to answer the call. Should they, for whatever reason, not have yet cultivated that particular momentum of the Godhead, then through their presence, that call will have to be passed up to a higher hierarch who works with that ascended one, and that hierarch will have that attainment. So there is this ladder of hierarchy that reaches from this world all the way to the heart of God in the great central sun. I hope you can begin to have a sense that the ascended masters are not otherworldly, that the ascended masters, for all of their purity and perfection, and while they do pour their attention into magnifying perfection, it does not mean that they are insensate to your petitions. Far from that, through the connection that they maintain with your I Am Presence, with your Christ Presence, through the connection that they maintain with your heart flame, you may rest assured that they know before you call. Still, you need to make the call because the law of octaves is still in force, and you need to expand the light within yourself. You need to learn to do these things by invoking the light of your own mighty I Am Presence, and wherever needed, the ascended masters will step in and invisibly help to hold the balance and reinforce your own striving toward the light. Thus far, we have painted a picture of this closeness of especially the Chohans of the rays and other ascended masters who may have left behind a certain percentage of untransmuted karma, which obligates them to attempt to work with unascended mankind more directly, trying to convince and inspire certain life streams to follow the light. More than this, where you have, as it were, each ascended one working on their own, you have as well something else that is at work in this world. And that is the organized structure of the brothers and sisters of the mighty I Am Presence who are concerned with this world. This organization does not have any outward branch of itself proper at its level. It has such representatives as we ourselves, their anointed representatives. It has such instruments as the Ascended Master's sponsored activity, the vanguard activity, such as the Temple of the Presence. But the Brotherhood itself, for reasons best known to it, does not wish mankind to make more karma, rejecting them acting in persona, in first person, in the outer world, in ways that would be at the present time of mankind's ignorance and rebellion would be more harmful to mankind than helpful. So they work behind the scenes. They have an organized, concerted effort. And this really is the greatest body in this world, the greatest organization in this world. Its lineage and genealogy goes back many millions of years. So far back, in fact, that for all intents and purposes, there's little use in trying to quantify exactly how many earthly years when the formal institution of this organization began. It did begin quite a long time ago, at a time when our world was at its ebb tide, at its very lowest point. And so much of a burden of karma, negative karma, had weighted down the earth that it was questionable whether the earth would survive as a planet or whether it would become one of those belts of asteroids that do ring around certain of the planets orbiting around the sun. At this low point, it was our own beloved Sanat Kumara and all of the 7 holy Kumaras and their divine complements who acted in concert with each other, those 7 interacting with each other, that first covenanted with themselves and certain of the great councils that govern such things in the cosmos, covenanted together to offer up their own light to hold the balance, to hold in abeyance the worst of this karma, to preserve our blessed terra firma as a platform of opportunity for the children of God to reach their own ascension in the light. There have been so very many psychic counterfeits to this story. There have been so many overlays of superstition, of mythology, which it has become the fashion in the 20th century to add the added spice of space beings and space councils and aliens and all of that stuff. We here at the temple and the Ascended Masters have no part with any of those things. They are repugnant. They are an inoculation against the truths of these things. These ascended beings are not so very different from you and I, except in the perfection and attainment that they have achieved in their own sonship or daughtership under the mighty I Am presence. Suffice it to say that these many tens of millions of years ago, beloved Sanat Kumara elected to maintain an initiative to work with the mankind of Earth. As a part of that election, it was agreed that he could help beat the heart flame of all of the mankind of Earth, and that opportunity would be given to him to periodically send forth a new initiative to try to raise the whole consciousness of the race of mankind, to elevate the civilizations of the time or the dark ages of the time, elevate them en masse one notch higher in consciousness. As a part of this program, beloved Sanat Kumara sent forth the call from his heart out into the depths of the realms of the great central sun asking for initiates who were not ascended necessarily, as well as those who were ascended, to answer his call and to rally to the cause of the sustaining of this world and the program that would result in the eventual elevation of this world back into a realm of perfection. Many did answer that call. Many were ascended already, so they have always continued to serve from inner levels. By no means does this mean that they are limited to only helping the mankind of earth. That is something that is not needed for us to know at the present time. But in addition to those who were ascended, there are also those who had a great deal of causal body attainment already and were suitable to cooperate with Sanakumara coming to this planet and organizing themselves into a united body that would work at inner levels in various circles of councils on different rays for different parts of the challenge of raising the civilization. Some working in areas of spiritual religions, like Lord Maitreya does, starting new religions, but others worked in areas of scientific progress. Beloved Saint Germain, being a true Renaissance man, has such mastery that he dabbles in all of them, as does the Lord Mahachohan. Saint Germain has a keen personal interest in the spiritual sciences and the sciences of nature, so he maintains an interest in that. The Mahachohan has a natural affinity for all of the 7 Chohans of the 7 rays and the 5 secret rays. He is a truly natural father figure, if you will, whose gentleness and encouragement is a sustainment to all of the Chohans of the rays. So this program has been going on ever since that time without interruption. Civilizations have come and gone. Even some continents have come and gone. But still the Brotherhood maintains the Christ virtue of the constancy of their service. I assure you that the dynamo and the wellspring of that, while it does indeed come forth from the heart of God and the great central sun, there is especially those great brothers, the 7 holy Kumaras, who are like pillars of fire in their crystallized determination to continue to work with the mankind of earth, and they hold such a resolute focus. In one hand, they look upon the pattern of this earth as it exists in the divine mind of God that is referred to as the divine paradigm. And while they hold to that, as do the Elohim, they also pass it through their own consciousness and then direct it to this earth and disseminate it through the members of the Brotherhood who are basically working almost exclusively here, at the present time at least, with the unascended mankind of earth and with the elemental evolutions that are sustaining the earth at inner levels. So that dynamo of their resolute joint effort, joined with certain company of cosmic beings in the heart of the great central sun, and anchored at this end of the line, if you will, by beloved Lord Gautama, who now serves as the Lord of the world, their light beats the heart of every life stream in the world. Were it not for their augmenting the pressure of the heart flames, the karma of most people would basically result in a very young passage out of embodiment. Before the modern ages, I don't know what the average age of people was back in the Stone Age and the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, but it was probably in the 20s and the 30s. People did not live very long. And the infant mortality rate was extremely high. They press that light through and supplement the amount of crystal cord energy that is able to eke its way through from the individual's own beloved mighty I Am presence. There is an intimation of this brotherhood in its organized fashion in the work that the Mahachohan did as Homer. For there he sketched the outline of such an assemblage of gods and goddesses, the Olympians, with one hierarch at their head, Zeus by name, and a whole company of others that worked in concert with Zeus. Now, admittedly, for a whole host of reasons, in those stories, there was a lot of juicy stuff thrown in to keep people's attention about the purported foibles of these deities that were human foibles, that even these superhuman immortals were purported to have possessed. Saint Germain, as Plato, explained that those parts of the stories were not correct, that individualizations of the Godhead ascended were by definition perfect. They were not capable of any human behavior of any sort whatsoever. And that, of course, is the case with all of the members of the Brotherhood of Light. Still, you had the idea of this council and this physical retreat known as Olympus. And there are such retreats in the etheric belts around the earth, as well as certain physical retreats where the Brotherhood congregates from time to time for certain work that needs to be done from the physical plane. For you who are new to these teachings, this is more than the mere communion of saints standing in concentric rings around the throne of grace in the heart of God, just waving palm fronds, praising God, adoring God, and every once in a while fielding a call, a prayer from someone in the earth to them by name that they then pass along as a prayer that they intercede to Jesus or to God for help. This is a brotherhood that is most active in this world. A few things about this brotherhood. First of all, while we have touched upon the truth that each member maintains a seat of their own consciousness in the nirvanic world that would really be the music of the spheres, because each of these spheres is living, pulsing, sending forth, as you see, these probing light rays that actually originate in the electronic body, but pass through the causal body on the way to do whatever work in creation they are going to do. But in addition to each one acting there, weightless in that nirvanic world, there is a unifying oneness of the brotherhood that is thanks to this originating covenant by beloved Sanat Kumara. His love, the love of the seven holy Kumaras, those in the great central sun, such as the Nameless One, such as Alpha and Omega, those who journey regularly there in consciousness or maintain their station there, such as the Goddess of Liberty. That is a unifying nucleus of God love that by common agreement of all of the individual ascended masters, they all have agreed to blend the gifts that they are in their causal bodies, all of their talents, all of their momentums, They are all laid upon the altar of the Lord of the world and the Regent of the world, offered up as a living sacrifice for however it might be needed or drawn upon by any one member of the brotherhood. So there is a oneness of spirit there. That is the magnification of each by all the others, and a consummation of all of those together. That is known specifically as the entire spirit of the brotherhood of light. That is a great calm sea of actualized attainment. It is, by definition, the confidence of those who have conquered death. The last enemy, death, has been defeated by all of them. They are all ascended. Not that there are not unascended disciples of the brotherhood. But there is this supreme peace and peal of victory, this supreme sense of God dominion that is radiated through the length and depth and profundity of this entire spirit of the brotherhood of light. For anyone to have the slightest association with one member of the brotherhood, like your own El Moria, or Mother Mary, or Jesus, or any of the others that you are coming to discover, as soon as you are in touch with one, you can understand that each is a focus of the entire spirit of the brotherhood of light. And within that communion, there is an unspeakable sense of belonging to a body that has a greater purpose at work of world salvation. You feel as if you are part of a veritable army of light. You feel, if you are so fortunate to even have the tie to a member of the brotherhood, you feel welcomed into that communion. You feel accepted by all the other members of that community. And entering into the precincts of that brotherhood, you might initially feel, I'll be a wallflower on the back. I'll just slip in the back and stand there, and maybe no one will notice me. But you will bask in the glow of the exaltation and the joy that is going on in the brotherhood. And before long, you would realize that you don't have to be quite so bashful and receding, because there is that not only unconditional love that is there, but there is also the acceptance of your person. And in that, with that, comes a feeling of protection and utter safety. Like somehow or another you have passed out of the clutches of anything that this world could never reach you where you are, within the circle of that brotherhood of light. And so long as you uphold the dignity and the honor of your own Christ presence and mighty I am presence, you may ever thereafter feel that one or more of the brothers and sisters of this organization are keeping a watchful eye on your welfare, on your progress, on the program of the steep path to Christhood for your life stream. The Buddhists call this entering the stream. You have crossed into the river that separates the world from the inner planes of the ascended master octaves. You have entered that stream, and you might also be what the Buddhists refer to as the one who builds a hut, the one who never returns ever again. And eventually, the not disciple, which means the one who has taken the initiation of the ascension, and in being drawn up into their own Madhyayana presence, is no longer subject to all of the Guru-Chela relationship, but in their own I am presence is now in that ascended state. This body is not imaginary. It is not, regardless of what anyone might impute to it of superstition, whatever might smack of the awful psychic overlays and distortions that have been attempted to be foisted upon that sterling shield of the honor flame of the Brotherhood, does not touch the Brotherhood. The only thing it could ever do is so reach out ahead and slime the consciousness of those not a part of the Brotherhood, taint them with such a feeling of disgust that when they do hear of the real thing, they immediately stereotype it along with all of the other nonsense that they have heard about before. An additional dimension to this entire spirit of the Brotherhood of Light and to the sponsorship of beloved Sanakumara is the fact that, in one sense, it truly is the case that beloved Sanat Kumara has held the balance for the untransmuted mass karma of all mankind associated with this world for many millions of years. And it means that, and this has nothing to do with the Catholic perversion of selling indulgences, by the way, of the Middle Ages, but it does mean that whatever karma different people owe to each other, ultimately, you might say that in one sense, Sanat Kumara is the banker for everyone's karma. He has bought up the mortgages. He's bought up the bad debt. And he holds all of that for the whole world in that sense. And how does that relate? It relates in the sense of, for example, if you find that you come up short and there are forces at work that would try to castigate your life stream for maybe a mistake that you really did make, maybe a shortcoming that is coming home to roost, between the grace of Sanat Kumara as well as the ability of your own Madhyayana presence to pour forth the all-consuming love, you should have the sense that you have come in out of the storm of the outer world under the canopy of the protection of the Brotherhood and its ultimate hierarch, the regent of the world, beloved Sanat Kumara. And if need be, there are means available to beloved Sanat Kumara whereby he can adjust that overdue notice of karma when it arrives on your doorstep. The ones who are assigned the task of balancing these things are the representatives of the Lord of the world and the regent of the world, who go by the title of the Lords of Karma. Their job is to balance these scales of justice and scales of karma. Their job is to take the mercy of the law and apply it wherever possible in the life of an individual and in the life of a civilization, in the life of a country, in the life of organizations. All of these have collective good and bad karmic momentums that are, in fact, finely tuned and balanced and transmuted wherever possible by mercy of the law. So you can, in addition to your calls to your mighty I Am presence, if you find yourself in a dead-end confrontation where there appears to be no human way out, you can also make your calls to beloved Sanakumara. Ask him to focus the purity of his light and attention on the condition and to supplement as much as the great law will allow your own application to the violet flame to pay those debts to life, to see that the slate is balanced and purified and return back to its original pristine condition. The Brotherhood of Light is the most noble and magnificent and supremely powerful organization and is the greatest bulwark of protection to our world. In their ascended state, each of these ascended ones are in touch with the great I Am. They are themselves their own individualized God presence, reunited with all of the expressions of the outer vehicles into that mighty I Am presence. They are not ever thereafter concerned with anyone heaping praise upon them. They would never tolerate anyone, quote, worshiping them, fawning over them, genuflecting to them, bowing and scraping in front of them, idolizing them. Their every thought is entirely selfless. Their every thought is, how can we help the mankind of Earth? And I tell you, one of the greatest things that is happening in the world right now is that the doorway to the golden age is still open. It is being kept open by the torchbearers of the temple who are in devotion to their own mighty I Am presence, who are able to be fed by that mighty I Am presence, and who are willing to stay the course with, most especially, the leader for the next 2,000 years, beloved Saint Germain, in the great visions that he has of outpicturing an ascended master life out here in this world of form that is the best possible reflection of what life should be lived in accordance with the law of the being of each one's mighty I Am presence. An ascended master way of life of the dawning golden age holds up the ideal that we aren't going to be mañana. We're not going to look to a future that is always on the horizon, that is always receding, but we are going to engage with the ascended masters in the sacred work, not a toil, but the sacred work of, in our own personal lives and together, our joint efforts together to outpicture here the dawning golden age of Saint Germain, to live life the same way that it is being lived, not only by all of the ascended masters, but by their unascended disciples in their physical retreats, in their etheric retreats, to practice the golden precepts of the ascended masters and bring that forth into this outer world. One of the things that Mighty Victory explained about the service of the seven holy Kumaras is that every 2,000 plus years, they inaugurate a new initiative to try to advance the cause of the Golden Age, to ratchet up mankind's consciousness in a collective way. 4,000 years ago, that initiative was with the fifth ray, the green ray under Lord Ling, who was an embodiment as Moses, the so-called Mosaic dispensation. 2,000 years ago was the Piscean age, and the effort was through Christianity. Now comes the advancements of that Piscean age that took it as far as it could into the dawning golden age of the Ascended Master Saint Germain, when we are seeking to hold the vision of life as it is lived in the mind and heart of God in the great central sun as a group of unascended life streams and bring that forth into a true outpicturing of the golden age. To let our lives, individually and collectively, be the example before the world that this can and shall be achieved. In the furtherance of that, we have the outpouring of the Kumaras that occurs. That outpouring is taking place, as was referenced by the twin flame of Sonic Kumara, Lady Master Venus, yesterday, the secret love star. Much has been said and published about this outpouring of the golden pink glow ray of the secret love star. In addition to that, every golden age must have the means whereby the balance is going to be held constantly for such a golden age to take place. During the time of Moses, the Ark of the Covenant was the device that the Brotherhood elected to use to focus a ray of certain cosmic beings within the Ark, guarded by the covering cherubim, to radiate forth the light of the Shekinah. And it was by the focus of that impetus that the Red Sea was crossed, that the Israelites were able to regain the promised land and so forth. During the Piscean age, the time of Jesus, the record of his ascension was a beacon of light at inner levels. He utilized the ritual of the Mass and of communion to pass that light to the members of his congregations, his churches far and wide. During this time, there are a number of more advancements in how that is done. Chief amongst them is all of the empowerment where each one of the torchbearers, each one of the disciples of the Ascended Masters, is being taught to be a priest or priestess, standing at the altar of their own heart flame and their own mighty I Am presence, officiating at that altar in their decrees and their invocations to call down the rain of light of their God presence upon themselves and upon the earth in a vigil that goes on night and day, a violet flame vigil, decrees here at this altar. The decrees and the answers from the Ascended Masters and from each one's mighty I Am presence is one of the most important ways by which the Ascended Masters are establishing the dispensations for the dawn and golden age. The others were more passive in that the masses of people were merely receiving. The beauty of the decrees is that you are playing your own active role, which is absolutely necessary if there is to be such a turning of the age. In addition to the decrees, you have events such as this, where the Brotherhood is discoursing, the charge of light is packing the atmosphere in preparation for the time when the Ascended Master will part the waters of time and space, and they themselves will not only hold forth with their inspiration and instruction, but also the charge of their Ascended Master presence, radiating forth, going forth in concentric waves, and going forth in currents where ever there are receptive hearts far and wide across the face of the earth. In addition to those, we have the dispensation for those causal body momentums of the various members of the Brotherhood of Light. By covenant and by agreement, the members of the Brotherhood have all agreed that they will have certain gifts of their momentum that they will dedicate to the cause of Saint Germain's golden age. These are attainments in healing, attainments in science, attainments in devotion, all of the 7 rays and the 5 secret rays. These are the gifts of the gods placed in the treasury, symbolically speaking, and within that treasury, you might consider that those gifts are all being fused together as one would fashion a sword out of a piece of raw steel or iron, plunging it into the crucible of the fire, pounding it on the hammer and anvil, bending the red-hot metal over on itself, pounding it, bending it, plunging it into the water over and over again so that the various layers and even different metals are eventually fused together to make the strongest and the sharpest and most penetrating blade. So the fusion of this entire spirit of the Brotherhood of Light is the dispensation announced by the Mahachohan and Saint Germain as streaming golden helicon. It is that charged momentum of ascended master fire that is anchored not only upon this altar, but wherever there is an altar raised up by torchbearers that is connected over the network of the Buddhic web of light, where that Buddhic web passes and dips down into the physical, wherever the altars are maintained by the devotion and the decrees and the consecration of that space, there springs up such a focus of streaming golden helicon. And what is the purpose of that? It is to roll back, and to be a relentless, constant river of God light that meets the effluvia of the planetary body and meets even the sum total of disciples' untransmuted karma, holds the balance for that, and like a two-edged sword slices through that mass consciousness and continues to shine and burn and flow night and day, always going on and on and on as an unfed flame, so that more and more this momentum will burrow, if need be, through the psyche of mass consciousness, of the effluvia, find the slumbering coals of the divine sparks on the altar of the hearts of more and more of mankind, and like the bellows of that river, breathe upon those slumbering coals, fan those coals until they burst once again into a flame, igniting the heart and sending the life streams on the quest for truth, and ideally rising up the spinal altar into the mind and cauterizing hardness and brittleness and rigor mortis of mindsets of the ages, burning through it with truth, burning through it with wisdom, and making room for the mind of the golden plume of the mighty I Am presence to once again be ignited and serving as a magnet so that those life streams will join the ranks, will hear the call at inner levels, go on their quest and join the ranks, filling the ranks of those who must be here for this greatest work of the ages to be in living earnestness to lower the dawning golden age, all in more and more close cooperation and a closer walk with the members of the entire spirit of the Brotherhood of Light. Thank you.